with the son of the famous Formula 1 driver Stirling Moss, Elliot Moss, and in Italy Stirling Moss is called the king without a crown because he never won an F1 championship but won 16 races in Formula 1, scored 24 podiums, 16 pole positions, and in only 66 races. So he retired in Formula 1 in 1962 due to an accident at Goodwood, and he drove for Mercedes but never with Ferrari, even if Enzo Ferrari thinks that he was a great driver. But I know that in this book he raced with Oscar, that is a car built in Bologna, and he won. And today I'm with you and I can ask you a lot of questions in his career.
Absolutely, please. You nailed it there. Very well done. I'm very impressed with your historical knowledge of Formula One.
Thank you, Elliot. So now let's start speaking about the sportsmanship that in 1958 when he was gonna win the championship, but he helped Mike Orton, his rival that raced for Ferrari, after he was disqualified, to make him count on the scoring points, and so he won the championship like this, and Stirling Moss unfortunately lost out in that championship, but he had a lot of sportsmanship, and I wanted to ask you if this sportsmanship that he had could be seen in the present era of Formula One.
I don't think so. We haven't seen that kind of sportsmanship for a long time. He died at the age of 90 and was asked about it many, many times, as you imagine, and he never regretted. I mean, it didn't occur to him that would be the wrong thing to do. I think nowadays people, you've seen them knock each other off for points and take out their main competitor in the actual race. And I think certainly they argue after the race for some of the points they should have got, or they feel they should have got, or so-and-so did whatever wrong. And my father just didn't like to win that way. He wanted to win. He raced very hard. He was very competitive, but always the right way.
You are the youngest son of Stirling Moss, and I know that your father, like I said before, retired in Formula 1 in 1962 due to an accident, and you were born in 1980. What are the memories that that are related with your father? How was he as a person?
I love my father. I got on very, very well with him. We're kind of the same, very similar people. So I think we got on better once I was growing up and I'd moved out. He could be difficult to live with. I mean, I think, you get that with professionals or people like that at any rate. But of course, like you say, he's a generation older. Children should be seen and not heard. We used to say that in England. It was an expression, children should be seen and not heard. But I think most parents in the 1980s had moved on from that kind of mentality. Whereas I think it was still very much around in the 60s, the 50s and the 60s, which is of course when a lot of his friends, and my sister was born in the 60s. I think it was less unusual then. In the 80s he seemed very strict. He did seem very strict. But at the same time, by the time he died, he was my best friend. I think I was probably his there. So we got on. But to grow up with him could be difficult sometimes. Yeah.
Your father is often described as one of the greatest drivers in Formula 1 to never win a championship. But why, in your opinion, is considered also in general one of the greatest drivers?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to versatility. So they often say, the greatest driver never to win the world championship. But, that's a bit... that almost does him a disservice because it kind of puts him into a different category to world champions. And really most world champions consider him to probably have been better. And I think it comes down to versatility. He's widely considered probably to be the greatest driver, all-round racing driver in history, sports cars, Formula 1, rally, whatever. Most people consider him to be the greatest. Maybe Tazio Nuvolari might be upset about that, but he's up there. But it's the same in Formula One. You know, if you look at some of the records, I think his versatility is what kept him, and his competitiveness is what kept him highly regarded even in Formula One. If you look at some of the records, you know, people get obsessed with the amount of championships that people have or the amount of races. Well, we can get rid of the amount of races. Really, like you said, my father had only 66. I think you're speaking to Fangio, one of Fangio's sons, next week, and his ratio of wins extremely high, incredibly high. But his actual number of wins is nowadays looks quite low because he didn't race the same amount of races. But typically, when you look at champions, they form especially the really successful ones, Schumacher, Lewis, you know, the ones with the big amounts of championships, they form a relationship with the team. So it becomes a kind of symbiotic relationship. There's no doubt about it. You know, the best drivers get their pick of cars, and they tend to pick the best cars. Sometimes they get that wrong, but they're normally aiming to get the best cars. So you've got, you know, you look at Max. Max, I think I'm right in saying, you know this better than me, but I'm pretty sure he's never won a race. He's never even scored a podium outside of Red Bull. And for the vast majority of his career, or at least his successful career, he had Adrian Newey designing his car for him. Now that's an advantage by no question. That's an advantage. The same thing, Schumacher formed this. He got 2 championships with Benetton. He was still very good, but you know the vast majority of his wins were with Ferrari. Lewis is the same with Mercedes. I think maybe just 1 championship with McLaren. So the driver that has the most wins for different marks or under different marks is my father. The lowest horsepower car ever to win a world, the only person to win a race in a Formula One race in a 4-wheel drive car, my father. I think he's the only person to have ever won a Grand Prix in a Formula One Grand Prix driving a Formula 2 car. Again, my father, you know, even though he was racing against Jim Clark for factory Lotuses, he was the only person to win Grand Prix in the Lotus 18, which he did, you know, he was the only person to beat the Ferraris at all in 1961. And he did that twice at Monaco and the Nürburgring in a year-old underpowered car. Indeed, always there to talk to fans, which I think is important. It keeps you remembered.
Yeah. I imagine that now you follow F1. Who is the driver that, in your opinion, reminds the most Stirling Moss? I know this is a very tough question.
It's a very tough question because you get a couple of different answers really, depending on what you're looking at. Personality-wise, probably Sebastian Vettel. I mean, he is the closest driver today to having the mentality, despite how successful he's been. And let's be honest, you know, 4 world championships, again, all with the same team, but you know, and the same designer, it helps. 4 world championships, I think maybe only 3 people have more race wins than him now, and yet he's still incredibly humble. Like you, he likes history a great deal and respects that. You know, Lewis is very similar in a lot of respects to that. You know, he's a real racer, and I think his longevity in the sport as well, you know, I think he's there. He's got nothing to prove, Lewis, but he's still there racing for a world championship, simply because I think he'll say it's other things, but I think he just loves, you know, he really loves driving. He really loves the sport, and his determination and his commitment to the sport is similar to Dad. Dad retired, obviously, like you said, in 1962 because of a horrendous crash. But had he not, he fully intended to race into his 40s and his 50s, and I believe he would have done, just because he loved racing. You know, racing probably would have killed him if it didn't come very close to killing him. So Alonso as well is another very similar to him. Max, he's a racer, very much, but he's a bit, yeah, it sounds wrong to say this nowadays about a 4-time world champion with so many races, but he was a bit stupid. I mean, he was young when he started, which of course in my father's day, so was my father for that day. He was, one of his nicknames was the boy because of how young he was. You do have a different mentality, but you know, Max, no 2 ways about it. Had he been racing in my father's day, he never would have won a race, let alone a world championship. He'd have been dead before he'd seen his 20th birthday.